Today we're going to be transforming this to this. Marc Parent, who plays guitar in the legendary Canadian band April Wine, reached out because he wanted some help kind of rebuilding his board to make it more tour ready. So we're going to tear this current setup apart. We're going to rebuild it from the ground up. We're going to see what we can't use for mods on the side to keep things nice and tidy and streamlined. So come along and let's rebuild it. Let's start by taking a look at what he has going on the board. As you can see, it's relatively straightforward. There's only three things on here. You've got the Shure wireless coming in. That goes to the AxeFX FM3. And then he has a Radial SGI box here, which if you're unfamiliar with that, essentially it transforms your signal to a balanced signal so it can go over long stretches of cable over XLR. And then at your amp, there is a SGI receiver that will then transform it back to a 1/4 inch unbalanced signal to go into your amp. And so that is our output. And then what he has going on the side here is actually a expression pedal input, which he uses his expression pedal off the side of the board. But as you can see, oh, there that goes. As you can see, he's not using mods. So I told Marc, I am morally opposed to this. So I think there's a better solution than just throwing cables through the hole. Same with the other side. He's got his power input coming through the side here. And so yeah, let's take a look at what he's got going on under the board. So here's his power in, coming to a little power cube that splits the power signal to his Shure power. He's got this power. I think actually one of these, this IEC was going out to a Seymour Duncan power stage, but he's not planning on using that anymore. So we're gonna actually be pulling that completely out of the equation. Marc also sent me this Radial power supply. Where's the info here? It says 15 volts on there. So I think pretty much all Radial's equipment, it's 15 volts for whatever reason. Comment below if you know why. And so he's got a AirTag under there, which is actually really smart. I'll have to ask him what the little case he's using on that is, because I really like that. So yeah, he's got a lot of cables happening under here. And to his credit, I think he made this board work for what he needed. It's a really compact setup. Like under the hood might be a little bit of a mess, but you know, for the most part, it's clean on top and it functioned the way he needs. But I think we can maybe improve it in a few ways. So let's start by pulling this thing apart. He's got some pedal plates on here, on there. This Radial box doesn't have a pedal plate, so we'll need to put one on there. And I want to just start with a clean slate. So let's do it. So Marc, I believe, did say he was having issues with the pedal plate staying on. And as you can see, we've got a combination of Velcro and new double-sided adhesive on there. I think part of the problem is this wasn't fully cleaned off, maybe not fully wiped. There will be a solution there. I'm confident we can get that mounted with the pedal plate so that he's not dealing with this jazz anymore. Okay. We got some tight thumb screws here. Let me show you a trick. Grab a 1/4. I mean, American one will do, but Canadian quarters seem to work best for me for some reason. And that'll help you loosen that up. Okay. I wouldn't recommend using a 1/4 or a big flathead screwdriver to tighten thumb screws, but if you've got one that's kind of stuck in there, it's better for loosening if you can't get your fingers quite in there. Okay, so let's get the FM3 off the board here. Just making a mental note, and actually I will take a picture of how he has things connected here. I took a bunch of pictures before, but just for efficiency's sake, let's pull that off. IEC out, expression, outputs, inputs, pulling it all off. Looks like he's got his extra safety system happening here, so I'm going to snip these zip ties off. The nice thing with the perforated top sheet is if you need to zip tie something on, you've got lots of options for places to fasten to. All right, so as you can see, Mark was having issues with these plates staying on. These ones seem to be all right, but a couple of these, I'm not sure what happened there. Mark was concerned about heat, but I will say that some people are concerned that that's gonna compromise the adhesive, but the adhesive on the pedal plates is actually rated to something like 270 degrees Fahrenheit. If you've got your board getting that hot, you've got other issues, I think. That's like Arizona sun with your board in the back and the windows closed. Even that wouldn't even be 270 degrees. So all that to say, they're rated really high, so that likely isn't the issue. I think proper prep work, taking the time to do that right, will make sure these are clean and give them a good squish. That compression is what's going to help those stand the test of time. Okay, so I'm going to continue to pull this board completely apart, and then we'll clean off this adhesive residue. Nope, never mind, that one wasn't on good because it was on a screw. I wouldn't recommend that. Initially, Mark was saying, I don't think I need mods. We can just use what he has. And to be fair, if that's what you have, if you have a solution for putting all your ins and outs under the board, that's great. This little power cube is actually super handy. But I think we're not really going to reuse anything from this, except I think he wants this TRS cable off the board, so he has something to plug it in off the side. But we're actually going to use another TRS cable to go to the AxeFX. From a mod on the side. You'll see later. So let's at least get this TRS cable out. Gonna undo all this hard work here. And Mark mentioned, I think he's gonna get a straight TRS cable, which might work a little better. Maybe the right angle on one side, but straight on the other, because he's clearly not gonna need that much slack off the side of the board. We'll grab this AirTag off the bottom too, obviously. But other than that, I'm going to leave everything else on this old board. See if we can figure out how this AirTag is actually on there, because it's on there good. I believe. Oh, this just threads off. Yeah, there's an AirTag in there. And let's figure out how that's actually stuck on there. Just looks like an adhesive on there, so we may need to find a new adhesive. Actually, I'm going to try something. Let's do some undo. So this is actually a what do they call it? It's like a framing adhesive remover. So for something like when you're framing, you use an adhesive around the outside of a picture. So if you want to pull that out of a frame and put it in a new one, this will temporarily remove the stickiness, the tackiness, so that you can pull it off, but then once it dissipates, that stickiness will come back. So let's see if this helps in this case. And I'm just dripping some on there sketchily. Kind of getting it everywhere, but not too worried. We'll let that sit for a second. Or a few seconds, and then in theory it'll come off. So now I'm just going to dab that, and that should the stickiness on that should mostly come back, but if we need a new adhesive, we got some laying around we'll use. Just using a microfiber cloth to hopefully not leave a bunch of residue or lint on here. Okay, that away. All right, remind me later to put this back on his board so you can track it. I think that's it. Let's stitch this one and see what we're putting it back on. Ding 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 ding. All right, so Mark wanted to put it on another Duo 17, but as you can see, it's in this fancy electric blue. This is a limited color run. As of right now, we only have trio and solo sizes left, no duo. But I will say we want to do limited color runs in the future. So if you have an idea for a color you'd like to see next, feel free to comment down below. But actually, before we get too far into doing that, I think what we'll do is remove the stuff from the bottom of these pedals, just so those are clean and we're ready to put pedal plates on later. All right, so for this one, that is actually pretty relatively well stuck on there. What I recommend is you take a knife like this, Olfa segmented craft knife. Be safe, always cut away from yourself. And then use the knife to kind of add an angle, split the adhesive in between, because you don't want to be prying. If you got a screwdriver or something in there, that's just going to wreck your pedal. It's going to bend the plate. And as you can see with a knife, just kind of breaking the seal of the adhesive between the plate and the pedal is really helpful in that case. Let's look at this one. This Velcro on there, I was able to just pull off. In some cases you might need pliers or something to get a little more grip. So as you can see, we've got some adhesive left over on the pedal itself. So once again, I'm reaching for the undo. Just gonna let it soak into that adhesive a bit. Give that a bit of time and that'll help me roll off that adhesive. While we're at it, let's apply some to the AxeFX here too. So this undo will dissipate, so you don't have to worry about it kind of a little bit getting inside the pedal, because it will naturally just dissipate into the air. But something like this, I'm just going to use a little extra caution so I'm not firing liquid into the circuit board. So I'll just wet down this cloth and kind of dab a little bit on there. I'm also going to use some rubbing alcohol swabs just to help wipe this off. You don't really want to get this stuff on your hands, so I'd recommend washing any that you do get on there off your hands. Currently I have some on there, but as long as it's not on there for too long, you should be all right. All right, that one is mostly good to go. I will say that some guys have used hair dryers or heat guns to help get that off. If that works for you, that's great. I just don't have one with me right now. I would be sure to not overly heat it, or if you're using a heat gun, make sure you got it on the lowest setting and it's pretty far back. But that will help kind of soften the adhesive to make life a little easier. Let's give that a kind of final once over with some rubbing alcohol swabs. I see now that this says do not block vent holes, referring to the ones on the side, but I think just for good measure we will not block that one either. Okay, we have some residue everywhere. I'm going to tidy this up and then we'll see what needs to be done to mount the SGI. So we could just as easily put the pedal plate on this side, but I think since in this case we are planning to put this on top of the board, You could mount it underneath. We've got options for that if you want to take the XLR out from here, mount this on here. We have XLR through options, but in this case, Mark just wanted to keep this simple and put it on top. I mean, the other way would be simple too, but he was just thinking, since there's only 3 things on the board anyways, put it up here, XLR goes in there, then it just makes sense to keep our labels there. So I'd rather not put the pedal plate on this side. So we're gonna pull the adhesive off of this so we have a nice clean area to put the pedal plate on. And in this case, this adhesive came off relatively easy, so I'm going to set that aside in a way that if he wants to, he can reuse this. All right, so let's just give that a good wipe, the alcohol swab. And that's just going to make sure any adhesive residue or oils are completely off of there. Okay, all 3 pedals are cleaned off. So let's start working on the new board. So we've got some stuff we want to put on this board, but I'm thinking what I want to start with is the LEDs. They'll just be the most sensical thing to put on first. So let's open those up. So with LEDs, you get the remote, you get a little zip tie that we use to tie the receiver portion up, alcohol swab just for cleaning the surface, and what else is in there? That's it. So let's open that up. So I always recommend putting the LEDs along the inside of the guitarist side, if that makes any sense, on the upper part, so towards the perforated top sheet. So let's give that a clean with rubbing alcohol first. Okay, I got to think about which side we actually want this on. So I think power, we're going to have a Hi5 mod on this side, probably here. Probably makes the most sense to have the DC barrel plug on that side. So let's do that. I'm gonna pull the plastic backing off here. Put that off there. And then I like to start on one side, get this end tight along one end, and then kind of starting on one side, press it as you go. Tuck that up there and just give that a good squish. I'm thinking this might get in our way later. If it does, I'll just pull the zip tie off and put it back on, but for now I'm going to zip tie this somewhere around there. And all that does is prevent this adhesive on the LED strip from wanting to come undone if that gets pulled on. Snip off that slack. So with this board, as you can tell, the cable management holes on top are a little too small to fit an IEC cable end, and on the AxeFX FM3 we have a IEC input. So clearly, if we want to bring power up from the bottom, something's going to need to happen there. And what Mark had done on his board is he had modified the hole, made it a little bigger, and then you could fit it through. You can get cable ends that you could solder or screw together the cable end on the end. But in this case, what I'm going to show you guys is a little modification I recommend. In some cases, that'll be really helpful. So step one, we're going to pull the end cap off of this side. Grab a drill for that. And you can, of course, use just a number 2 Phillips screwdriver to pull this stuff off too. Give this a little bump. So what I actually want to do is, you can see here that this cable management hole is right by the edge of the board. So when the end cap's on, it actually hides that. So I want to extend this cable management hole so that I can fit this through there, and then once it's through and plugged into the pedal, we can then put the end cap back on, hiding that little bit. And this little bit of material cut out there, it's not going to affect the overall integrity of the board. So there's a few ways you could do this. You could use like a hacksaw, you could use a Dremel. What I'm going to show you is just using some tin snips. So if you know someone that has some tin snips, this is a quick and easy little hack with the right tools. All right, so we got some tin snips. Open those up and make sure this is the correct hole that I want to actually be cutting. So towards the back, fairly confident that's the one. So I'm just going to snip across there. Maybe I should have taken a little less meat. That'll be good. The other side. And you can see I kind of bent it out of shape a bit there, but should be no problem to realign it. I would then recommend filing that so it's smooth, so if you do have your hand underneath there, you're not slicing it open. I think it's actually a pretty clean cut, but depending on what tool you use, you don't want that to be too sharp. So I have a little file here, we'll file it down. All right, that's looking and feeling good. So that modification is done. Let's double check our cable actually fits through there. And it's a little tight, but that works. So next I'm going to install the IEC mod in the end cap. So let's start by removing this micro mod blank. Just take those couple of screws out of there. And so what we're doing is we're taking out these black screws, but for IEC, the IEC mod, let's press that out of here. This is going to need a little more oomph to get out. In some cases, the powder coating on there may be a little sticky. If you can't get it out, just give it a little more oomph. If it's really not working, send us an email, we'll get you sorted. We took those black screws out, but now with the IEC mod, we want to throw some silver screws in there. And so the IEC mod actually comes with the silver screws. So I'll go grab those. They're right here. So these ones are silver in color. They're a little longer. They got a little more threads on them. So I'm going to put that in place. And get one side started. Start the other side. I think I'm going to put the Hi5 mod in this slot. So just to save time later, I'll pull that out now. But word of warning, to save yourself some headache, don't put this mod in yet, because what's going to happen is if you have the mod in there, it's going to conflict with the screw hole. So for now, we're just pulling the blank out, and then we'll put the mod in later. Okay, so before I forget, just want to check that this is going to work. So if we got the pedal somewhere around there, plug that in. Oh, that'll need to be this way. It'll take some twisting to get it to want to work the way we need it to. Okay, so that goes that way. Loop that around there. Happy with that. So we'll leave that. What I have here, actually, I should mention, is a two-way splitter. So we'll leave that on there. Set this aside. let's put that end cap back on. So now, with the end cap on there, you can see it hides that modification that we made, and you're all good to go. So let's put the screw hardware and handle hardware back on now to reinstall that end cap. So, with all this stuff dangling around now, I might plug that in just to keep it from flopping. Let's reinstall those feet screws. If you are using a drill, be careful not to over tighten. I would, for most cases, recommend just using a standard number 2 Phillips screwdriver. And I'm missing a foot screw, so we'll do the handles first, I guess, and then go find another screw. So I'd recommend getting one side started and then the other, and then cinch both sides up. Good. Now let's see if I can find my screw for the foot. There it is. I'm sure you guys all saw that there and were laughing at me. All right. So let's install the other foot. That is good to go. Got that fed through. On the other side, I want to install a 4X mod, so let's do that now. For this one, I'm not going to bother taking the end cap off, simply because with the IEC mod, it makes things a lot easier getting that tight screw in there. But with the 4X mod, you'll see it's pretty simple to do without taking the end cap right off. So, a couple of screws on there and there. I'm going to pull those two off. Now that blank should come right off. See, that one was much easier. I might have had that one off before though. But 4X mod. So when you get a 4X mod, it does come with screws in the box. You can use those, but I'm just going to reuse the ones that I literally just pulled out. So I'm going to put this so that the labels on this are facing up. That way you can label which is which underneath. Install one side. Get it mostly cinched up, and then do the other side. Tighten that one up and then fully tighten the other. That's good to go. Okay, while we're at it, while we're in the mod zone, let's put in the Hi5 that I want to put on this side. All right, let's open this up. So this is our Hi5 mod. It's a collaboration with Cioks, and so you can use this on its own with our AC mod 65, or you can use it in conjunction with something like Cioks' DC7. You can link from their 7 output to this thing, which will give you 5 more, hence the name Hi5. So I'm going to install that in this side, and this will give us all the power we need for the LEDs, for the Shure wireless, as well as for the Radial SGI. And the nice thing with the Cioks is you can use these dip switches to change your voltage on each channel to 9, 12, 15, or 18. So with the 15 volt input on the Radial, it's nice to have that option with Cioks, which as far as I know, no one else offers a 15 volt option. So very versatile in this case specifically. Okay, so let's put this Hi5 on what is actually the left side, and I want these dip switches to be down so I can actually access them. Do this so you can actually see. One side kind of started, and then the other. So this one end, this other end I should say, is going to go to IEC MOD 65 that'll mount underneath. We'll leave that for now. And I guess move on to actually mounting some pedals on top of the board. Imagine that. All right, so simply because it's the biggest, let's start with the FM3. For good measure, I'm gonna give it another clean. I'll do all the pedals with rubbing alcohol and give that time to dry. All right, so we got some pedal plates. What I'm gonna do is lay those out roughly where they're gonna go. So this one, I wanna inset a bit. So I'm gonna go something like that. We'll just lay it rough for now. And then this one, we want basically right on the corner. What I'm trying to do is make sure it's not gonna hit these screws. So I'm going up a couple rows of holes here. Something like that. And then get a rough idea for where that's gonna be. So that's kind of roughly the back there. And this one I'll want more so on the corner. And this one, something like that. So let's just see where that's lining up. I'll flip it over to get a better view. Okay, so I went way too low with those ones, but it's looking pretty good. I don't know if you can see over here, we've got nice space for the vent hole there. It's looking all right, but I gotta go higher with this side, so let's line that up there. Yeah, clearly these need to come up to there-ish. And I might want to sneak everything over one, because you probably want to push that a little more that way. Actually, this one I won't, just because it might hit the screw hole, but do this one as well. And these screws are scuffing up the top, but the powder coating is durable, so it can handle it. This board is going to be on the road, and this won't be the last time it'll be scuffed. All right, just going to double check that's looking good on the other end, and probably commit to that. All right, that's looking good to me. So I'm going to pull the wax paper backing off of all four of these pedal plates. And that way we can apply the pedal to all four at the same time. So in the future, if you need to move it, all of them will be aligned to the grid. And so now what I'm going to do is use the front of the board and maybe a row of holes this way, I should say column of holes this way. That will just help me keep it square while I'm applying the pedal to the actual board. Not to the board, to the pedal plates. Okay. So right now I'm mostly looking at the back row. I'm going to go back just a hair. Double check that front looks good. Double check. Got enough clearance there. If I needed, I could sneak it over a row, but I like having just a little extra clearance on this side so that you can actually get your hands and use that hole. All right, so now this is an important step. Kind of pressed the pedal onto those plates. I'm going to carefully remove that, making sure all of them are still attached, and they're not. Doing it live here. So I'm going to reattach these pedal plates where they were. Click that back into place. Make sure that one's still aligned to the grid. Good example of what to look out for. So Not sure why that one didn't want to grab. Let's see if I can't coax it to get on there from the bottom. Now, in theory, those are all still aligned. Saved it. Now let's slowly pull that off. There. Now we have all 4 medium pedal plates adhered. But this is the important part. Now you want to give that a good squish against your hand. We always joke that you gotta press the foot switches while you press them on, otherwise it won't stick. Squish them on. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go press it against a hard surface here. Put it on the concrete, press it down. So I think that initial compression is what helps the pedal plates stand the test of time. So giving them a good squish right off the hop, I think will really help set you up for success. And as you can see, managed to keep these vent holes open, so I'm pretty happy with that. All right, let's put this back on the board. And now I'm gonna have to fiddle with twisting this cable in just the right way that it's got some nice strain relief, but I'm gonna plug that in so I know what we're working with there. I think that's a healthy amount of a loop there, so it's doesn't have too much strain. So I think let's just go ahead and put some thumb screws in there just to lock that in place. I think for the most part, this board isn't going, this pedal isn't going anywhere. Alrighty, screw that one in. Tighten those up a bit. And let's move on to installing the other pedals. Okay, let's do the wireless next. Just for good measure, I'm going to lay out the radial, and I'll actually grab an XLR cable just to make sure we got enough space this way. Just to line things up, I'm going to plug this XLR cable in, and I think ideally, instead of having this overhanging so someone could step on that, we're going to bring it back to avoid that situation. And like I said earlier, we offer an option, so if you wanted, you could feed this through and have it come up the side of the board, but in this case, this is what we decided on. So let's see how that aligns in conjunction with the Shure wireless here. Might sneak it back just a bit. And then what I want to do is actually plug in the cables that are going to be in the back of this, just to make sure we have enough clearance there. Alright, so what we're using on the output of the wireless is actually an insert cable, which is a TRS to 2 TS cables. More on that later. It has to do with the 4X mod routing. I'll explain it in a minute. So we're going to plug that in to the output of the wireless. Double check which one's output. Oh, it says on the outside. Instrument out. In this case, we're not going to actually be using the instrument in. Okay. Feed that through. We're using the EBS flat patch cables for this. Everything's EBS. I just love the low profile, and they haven't let me down. So, love them. Highly recommended. Okay, and so that one, we're going to need it'll be an input from here, so I'm going to grab another EBS flat patch cable just to make sure we have enough clearance there. Alright, so this will be going input, so that'll be coming from the output of the FM3, which I believe actually they're using the one over here. So I'll probably just go with a longer one. I'll sort that out in a minute, but for now, all I'm trying to do is get these cables plugged in for reference. Okay, so let's go into the input of that. And since the cables are so flat, we got lots of options. So I will probably sneak the Shure over right to the edge of the end cap, and that's just so there's like next to no chance he'll accidentally hit this. All right, happy with that placement. Let's commit to putting a pedal plate on the wireless. So looking at the bottom, I want to try and get that maybe a little more towards the bottom. So when he hits the foot switch, it's kind of on the more rigid side instead of wanting to rock, which usually isn't a problem, but just to be on the safe side. Pull that wax paper backing off, and just putting one pedal plate on at a time is a little easier than all four. But I'm going to use the edge of the board as a guide, the edge of the end cap for square. Push that down. And then, of course, got to squish it against your hand real hard. And press the foot switch. Alrighty. So that's looking good to me. Let's throw a thumb screw in the bottom of that, just to keep it from moving. Sometimes I put a headlamp on to make this easier. Okay. So, looking for a good balance of not being too squished this way, but also making sure that we've got enough strain relief there. So I think that looks good there, because I want to leave room for handles on both sides. Can probably sneak it over a bit. But that's looking good to me. Let's put the radial on. And of course, you always got to have the Temple logo the right way up, so I always make sure they're that way. Totally unnecessary, but also completely necessary. Okay. So I think somewhere around there should be good. Now you can see what I did is I put it probably further than I had it laid out before. Well, step one, let's squish that on there. No foot switch to press, but I think it'll still stick. Right, so I had it further ahead, but obviously since it's on a grid, we can just sneak that back as however far we need. You can rotate it if Marc decides in the future he'd prefer to have it this way. You can lock it in that way. There might even be room to have it over here if need be. You can always move it, rotate it however you need on the perforated sheet, top sheet. Okay, let's plug that in. I think since the routing on this is fairly straightforward, I think we should be good to keep everything plugged in, and then we just got to plug in a few things on the back of the FM3. Let's get this out of here. Fasten that into place. Okay. Plug our input. Okay, this is actually, so this is the output to the amp. So that's got to go into, I'll refer to my photos, but I believe it's output 2 here. Now you got that in the back. Looking at this, I might want to move the FM3 back a row, just so these cable management holes are right near there, so you don't have this extra little swoop going into the cables. We'll see what works better. Okay, while I'm here, you might as well plug TRS into here, and that's going to go out. and under, and through to jack number 4 on the 4X mod. So that's actually our TRS expression input. So the nice thing is we can label that, then Marc will know this is expression, this is his guitar in, which you may have noticed if you've used a wireless before. Why would you need a 1/4 inch in if you're using a wireless? This will be our wireless override. So TRS is plugged in. Now I'll have to double check which is which. One side of this of our guitar input is going to go tip, and the other side is going to go ring. So for now, I've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right. I'll put on the screen what's correct, but so this will go into our input. I'm gonna go through this other hole here. And so, to explain this whole insert cable thing with the wireless, the Shure is going to go from the Shure to the side of the board, and there's some built-in switching on the 4X mod that when nothing's plugged in the front, it's just going to carry on as normal to the input on the FM3. But as soon as you take an instrument cable, plug it in to the 4X mod, it's going to override that input. It's going to override the Shure. So it's going to kind of cut that out of the signal path, and your guitar is now going straight to the input on the FM3. So it's a way of completely bypassing the Shure. If it were to, whatever reason, break down, you've got a dead battery, etc. You can quickly plug in there and you're good to go. Okay, so to bring power to the Hi5 mod, there's no power supply built in. You can think of the Hi5 mod as a power distributor. So where the power is actually going to come from is this AC mod 65 power adapter. So we need to mount that somewhere. You can see on the enclosure that it has threaded pegs built in. So we're going to find a good place to mount that. I'm using thumb screws to mount it. And so we can put that wherever we need on top. Thinking realistically, if we put it somewhere around here, let's plan so that you don't have messiness happening with the IEC cables there. So let's plug that in. You can see where everything's wanting to line up here. I'm thinking somewhere around there. If I could see, I would line up those. Let's actually sneak this over a little bit just so it's not conflicting with our input highway there. All right, so get one thumb screw in there, tighten the other one in. Now, in hindsight, I should have double checked that enough slack to get over to the Hi5 mod, but I'm pretty confident I will. Okay. And that can go into either side of this 24 volt link input. So now our Hi5 mod is powered up. Let's see, I'm going to check if I'm missing anything as far as connectivity goes. We've got in from the wireless going in there. We've got expression going out. We've got output going to the input of the SGI, which will then go to his amp. I think that's everything. All right, so the Hi5 mod comes with some cables. The link cables you can use to link from one Hi5 to another. And then these cables are, of course, what you're going to use to power your pedals. All right, so let's start with the radial. I believe it's center pin positive. So I believe one of these red flex cables is going to be what we need. Let me double check that. Yep, center pin positive. So I believe we want this red input. I think not gonna have enough slack. Should be good. Thinking I might need to move the AC mod out of the way temporarily just to get this cable through. Good to go. Screw the AC mod back in place. Tighten her up. Now, let's run that across to our Hi5, which I'm going to do this now before I forget. Let's take a mod driver. You can do it with your fingernail if you have sharp enough fingernails, but I want to make sure that this is set to 15 volts DC. So this one corresponds to channel 1 there. So plug the SGI into channel 1. Now that's set to 15 volts, 400 milliamps. And then let's power up the wireless. I'm going to double check the milliamps on that. So the Shure power supply is saying 12 volts, 400 milliamps, center pin positive. So I'm going to need another red cable, which is not in this conglomeration of stuff. It might take the green cable, probably not, but we'll double check. All right, so let's remove the Shure wireless briefly. And then I'm gonna take a look at the barrel size, which is what the green cable is actually indicating here. I think I'm gonna need a red one. So it is the smaller barrel. Some of them have a bigger barrel, which you would reach for the green cable at that point, but I'm gonna go grab another one of these red cables. All right, so we've got a Cioks Flex 2050, which is a 20-inch center pin positive cable for the Shure. Double check that's the one we want. That seems better. So I'm going to feed that through first, and then let's plug that in. Plug from the output of that. Pull that slack through so it's not in our way. All right, so fasten that thumb screw back in there. Make sure we have enough to get across. Yeah. Okay, so now what we're doing is going into output 2, but I want to make sure that that's set to 12 volts. So what we do for that is dip switch 1 up and dip switch 2 down. Those two are powered up. I'm going to grab a short, if there is one, black normal flex cable in here. That one's pretty short. We'll go with that. And that's what we're going to use to power up the LEDs. And so with our LEDs, those can be powered at anywhere from 9 to 12 volts. If you power them at 12, they're just going to have like a little more brightness. So I'm going to set that to 12. 1 is up, 2 is down. So output 3 is going to go under and over to the little DC barrel plug that comes on the LEDs. Push that in. I believe everything is plugged in, so let's power it up, see if she works. Okay, moment of truth. Plug it in. Ah, it doesn't work. Just kidding. You gotta turn the switch on the side. The nice thing with the IEC mod is it has an on-off switch. So if you're leaving your board set up at a jam space or something, you don't have to physically unplug to power down. You can just flick it on and off with the switch. Nice. Got power here, power here. I don't know if there's any indicator on the radial if there's power, but I trust that's working as well. This thing's booting up. Things looking good. I will do some sort of quick audio test just to make sure that I have this wireless hooked up correctly. So that should be going through when I plug something into the 4X mod. Now, I haven't actually used an AxeFX FM3 before, so hard to say if it's going to give me an indication without plugging out as well that I actually have an output. So I guess I'll have to plug something into here. Actually, for now, all I'm going to do is plug into the headphone output just to ensure we've got sound coming in through the wireless bypass. Looks like that's mute, that's unmute. All right. All right, so I'm not seeing any indicator that we've got input here. So I've got a feeling I've got that plugged in wrong. Just to ensure, let's unplug this one. Plug straight into there. This guitar is terribly out of tune. But yeah, I've got audio when I do that, so we're gonna have to swap that ring and tip. Pro tip, plug your guitar in if you want signal. That's not working, so let's troubleshoot. All right, so I figured out what I did wrong. I actually had the TRS portion plugged into the wireless, but the TRS needs to be plugged into the 4X mod. So that's kind of where you start. And then that bridges out to the FM3 and to the Shure. That way when you plug something in here, it will bypass. So let me just tidy up this cable a bit. And then I'll fasten the wireless back into place. All right, so you can see there, still have this plugged in, so there you go. If you can see, TRS here is splitting. The tip goes to the first pedal in your chain and the ring goes to the wireless. So hopefully that clears that up. I know it did for me. So now in theory, if I plug in here, you can see on here we got input now. So that is golden, this is good. The mute on that won't actually do anything, unfortunately, in this case, because it's not going to be running through the Shure, so you'd have to mute somewhere else, but that's the one functionality we lose, I guess, in this case. There's one other thing I want to do. The LED remote, let's get that on here. I like to find a place to fasten it on there. That's one of the last things we'll do before we tidy up the cabling underneath. All right, so for now, I'm gonna unplug this. So here's the LED remote. And what I like to do, simply because the adhesive doesn't like to stick to some plastics as well. So what I've got in the habit of is just kind of roughing up the plastic a bit. You could use sandpaper or something like that to scuff it up. But what I do is put the pedal plate on there roughly in the middle. and then I just do a little mark here, and then I move it up over a bit. And do another little mark here. And then I just literally do some cross-hatch shading. All right, so there you go. Like I said, you could use some sandpaper. It'd be a little more intentional than this, but I usually don't have sandpaper laying around, so this is the way I do it. I'm gonna then just clean it up with rubbing alcohol. As you can tell, I've gone through a dozen alcohol wipes in this video alone, so I'd recommend picking some up. Give that a good wipe and let that fully dry. So, I'm thinking it'd just be fun and easily accessible to throw that somewhere over there. So let's get this small pedal plate out. Just gonna rotate it this way so it's a little easier. Okay. So maybe if I'm gonna at least use it there, just so I can use this edge as an alignment source. Okay, so roughly there, using a row of holes as a guide, squish that on there. Now, of course, you don't need to mount this on your board. Like, it's handy, I find, instead of like throwing this somewhere in your gig bag or your guitar case or in with your pedal board, and then you take it out one time and you forget to put it back in. Find it's handy. You can mount it under the board this way, but in this case, you know, Mark might like it up there. He might not, but for now, that's where I'm putting it. So deal with it. I think all that's left to do is clean up the cabling underneath, and that's pretty much it. Got some zip ties, got some snips, and before I forget, we'll put this AirTag back in there. All right, AirTag is installed. Now let's tidy up all this cable slack. So what I like to do with these small black zip ties is kind of bend the end of the zip tie so it has kind of a hook shape, hook profile. That way when I put it through one hole, it'll want to easily scoop up through another hole. So if I put that through there, it should scoop back up through another one. And now it's easy to grab and complete the zip. All right, let's snip off the slack. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. I might take some extra time to double check the TRS input is good, make sure everything's working properly, ensure we've got a proper output from this SGI box. But I think that's pretty much ready to ship back to Mark. It's looking a little cleaner than what he had going on before, so hopefully Mark's happier with this little more streamlined setup. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comments section. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.
This is very, very high-tech stuff. This is not for the faint of heart. Purple, purple. Blue, blue. I studied many years for this. My job is to do this. So, my job is to play guitar, but mainly to do singing, so least amount of tap dancing possible. And then the output here, this goes to front of house. So Dano with the board always gets output 1. See, so he gets the cab, so it sounds like a guitar cabinet going to output 1. And then bypass the cab, because from here, this goes to output 2 and goes right to that orange cabinet right there. What people are hearing live is they're hearing a combination of direct out from the modeler and speakers.
And recordings to make Mark sound better.
Yeah.